So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about hip flexors and why it's important to strengthen and stretch those. So in this video, I'm actually performing a leg raise, and that's specifically to strengthen the hip flexors. The hip flexors are inside of the thigh, and when I say inside, I mean the part that's kind of like it's a muscle, kind of on both legs, of course, between the thighs, but it runs from like your hip to the inside of your knee, and the muscle is responsible for lifting your leg straight up, you know, and lifting at the hip, that is. And the specific reason I'm doing this is because I've been uh working toward a calisthenics move called the Elsa. It's really a gymnastic move, whatever you want to call it, but I've been working toward the Elsa, which is a move where typically you might hold on to parallel bars and then hold your legs straight out in front of you while your torso is upright. So just imagine yourself in an upright L shape, and it's incredible strengthening and endurance for the hip flexors and for the abdominals as well. Um, so that's really the main reason that I'm doing this move, and I've done it in the past. I just kind of backed off in favor of kind of more compound moves like the lunge and the squat, which kind of form like the foundation of my leg exercises. But since I'm working toward the L sit again, and I'm putting these back in there now, the thing about hip flexors is because you and I sit down all day long, our hip flexors get weak and they get tight. We are not designed to sit as much as we do. And what happens is that is like hours and hours of various muscle groups, not just the legs, but even also like the core being deactivated for hours at a time. Like for hours. We're not designed for that. And so what happens is, since we're just talking about the hip flexors in this video, the hip flexors are deactivated for a long period of time, and they're also held in the position that they're held in, and so they're shortened, and this ends up causing, like I said, weakness and tightness. Now, as far as the weakness is concerned, that means that over time, you know your ability to essentially raise your leg at the hip becomes impaired. Now, most of us, we won't really notice that very much, at least not for the first few decades. But whenever you start to see, for example, people who are in their older years, I don't know, if I were to estimate, maybe 70s and so on, and people kind of start to have like shuffling and whatnot, this could be a contributor to that because those muscles have been weakened for so long. It gets harder and harder to lift the leg at the hip. Okay, and so this results in like a shorter gait, a shorter walking stride. Now, tightness as well. That tightness comes from sitting down and having your hip flexor in a shortened position. It's also assisted by tightness in the hamstring, which is behind the thigh. Um, but that tightness as well is going to contribute to a shortened gait, and um, and yeah, and so again, this is all because we're not really using those muscles the way that we're supposed to. Now, there's an alternative way of sitting that a lot of people in um, what we tend to refer to as less developed countries, um, a lot of it's a way that they sit, which is really like a squat, a very, very deep squat, essentially where the back of your thigh is touching your calf. You're just kind of sitting like that. And that actually ends up being a superior way of sitting, so to speak, because you actually have muscle groups activated in that particular position. And what happens is, we think that, man, I just can't imagine holding my legs in that kind of position. I can't imagine that because my knees would be killing me, and I just can't get down there. But the thing is, if that's what you've been doing all your life, then it wouldn't be nearly as difficult. But anyway, I'm saying that to say that particular sitting position actually is activating various muscle groups, including the muscles in your legs and your core as well. So anyway, I'm saying all this to say, if you want to prevent the weakening and the tightening of your hip flexors, then you want to target them. Now, the way I've been targeting them in this video, obviously, is by doing leg lifts. So basically, what I'm doing is just holding myself up by my two arms, and then one leg at a time, I'm just kind of lifting. I do like 10 reps, and that last repetition, I hold it for approximately 10 seconds, then I switch. And especially when I hold it, I really try to hold it very, very firmly, very tightly, um, to kind of add more resistance and whatnot. So that's one way you can train the hip flexor. Another thing you could do is hang from a pull-up bar and do the same thing. Now, like, hold one leg up by with the knee bent and then stretch the other leg out in front of you. Now, if you don't already have decent amount of strength in your hip flexor, then it's going to be hard to raise it up to like horizontal position. So I don't typically do that, and I also don't do dead hangs from a pull-up bar because of my previous shoulder injury. I just kind of like try to play it safe. But that's another alternative um, that you could employ. Um, but anyhow, you also could indirectly strengthen your hip flexors by doing stuff like stairs and hill sprints or whatever, because what's happening is you're being forced to pull your knee up in an exaggerated manner, and so that's going to help you to activate those hip flexors. Just make sure, especially if you're doing sprints, you just need to make sure that you warm up, and it might be good to do just kind of walks at first, but exaggerate that leg lift, that knee lift, I mean, by going up an incline. And then, especially with stairs, if you wanted, you could just, you could kind of progress in regard to the amount of stairs you take at a time. So you could just do regular one step at a time. Then you could go to do two stairs at a time. And then if you're feeling particularly adventurous, you could do three steps at a time. So just ideas for how you can further train those hip flexors. Now, as far as stretching the hip flexors, I do that every night with the butterfly stretch, which you probably see me do in my videos. Basically, sitting on the ground with your feet touching your feet together, touching each other, like bottom to bottom. And then you can either, with your hands, press your knees down toward the ground, or you can grab your feet with your hands and then pull yourself forward as if you're trying to pull your head to to your feet. So that's one way of stretching your hip flexors. Another thing you can do um, to stretch your hip flexors, the lunge actually stretches and strengthens your hip flexors. So that's basically like an exaggerated walk where you step forward, a big step, and then you drop the back knee toward the ground. And so that actually provides a decent amount of strengthening as well. So, just a couple of ideas, but the main thing I'm trying to drive it in this video is that stretching and strengthening your hip flexors is a good idea, as it pertains to aging. It helps you to um, maintain that strength, which we take for granted when we're younger, but once you get older, having that kind of strength becomes very, very key when it comes to being able to move yourself around the way you always have. Because if you are intentional about it, and what happens is it starts to become more difficult, and then you have to really fight for it, if that makes any sense. So yeah, stretch and strengthen your hip flexors. As we get older, it becomes increasingly important to maintain and build muscle. Muscle helps you burn fat, stay mobile, and can contribute to longevity. However, many people have no idea how to work out to build muscle. My mini workout series on Patreon provides you with my body weight mini workout video library. These workouts use little to no equipment, which means that you can do them in the privacy of your own home. They start at beginner level and progress from there to ensure you continue to see results. Every workout is a full body workout, hitting chest, back, legs, and glutes, as well as other muscles in between. Become a patron today and receive access to my series of mini workouts, plus access to a digital copy of my book, 8 Weeks to Transform Your Diet and Your Health. By combining the workouts with healthy diet changes, as outlined in my book, you'll definitely be on your way to weight loss, improved health, and visible results. Join me at patreon.com/SeanB2B Fitness today.